Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you guys so much for sticking around today. All right, for any of you just joining us, my name is Gabriel Brown. I go by the moniker DJ Gabriel B. I live here in Sedona, Arizona, and that's exactly where we are filming from right now, is at the Humankind studio in Sedona, Arizona. And we just got finished with a wonderful interview with my beloved, actually, Mary Dancer Massisson. And we're about to start our next interview with one of my favorite people here in town who I've known for a long time, John Dumas. And John is a world-renowned, amazing musician, songwriter, artist, shamanic astrologer, inspirational teacher. As he says in his bio, his music helps bring peace, relaxation, and emotional nostalgia for a time long ago when we lived more in balance with nature. He has performed in countries all over the world, including Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and of course America. And he's even had the opportunity to perform inside the Egyptian pyramids, which is pretty amazing. And through his music, John likes to say that it's a sense of his commitment to his life's work to inspire love, compassion, and unity worldwide and continue to evolve. A belief that through the universal language of music, where words are not needed, that the beauty of oneness begins to emerge all over the world. Welcome, John Dumas.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Make sure you have that.
Oh yeah, I
gotta
talk into this.
Yeah, we're gonna talk into that microphone. So today, I'm really excited to hear you tell us a little bit about your journey in music, first and foremost, how you got started, what instruments really started to call to you, what instruments do you share most with the world, in particular in your medicine type ceremonies and offerings, and then tie it all back in somehow to this idea of mindfulness and meditation and where music and these practices that you're going to share with us really tie in. So maybe start with some of your history if you like.
Right. Well, it really ties in hand because the music for me has always been something that brings me out of my mind.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is I'm very analytical by nature. I'm from New England. I come from Massachusetts, and that whole, very dense, conservative kind of more background.
Yes.
And
I know. I was from there too.
It was quite a far cry coming out here to Sedona, Arizona, and it literally feeling like it was on another planet, like Mars or something. But I came here with an intention to get away from that because I was already well under the path of being on a spiritual path. And that was a pretty incredible experience that when I was in art school, so I was at UMass and majored in art. So I was always working with my hands, painting, drawing, creating. And that was just something because I didn't know of anything else that was that exciting or fun for me. So I decided, well,
the joy of art.
Let me go do art. And I felt like an artist. I was always drawing as a kid and, work painting, doing things like that. So it was just really fun for me to have that vision and be in that, having that mindset, because it would get me in the zone, in that flow state. We're talking about that with the dance. And when we get to just totally surrender and be present in ourselves and feel the timelessness. And so when I'm creating art, it's the art that's almost creating me at the same time. So there's this flow state and that zone. So it gets me out of all that thinking, right? And so as an Aquarian mind, we're very analytical. And so my mind's always going a million miles an hour. So it's nice to be able to just get into that quietude. And so coming out here to Sedona, it was a hike that randomly, synchronistically, probably more so, I had just come from Florida and in Palm Beach area, and it was there was a place called Boynton Beach, Florida. So when I saw Boynton Canyon Vortex out of like a list of like 10 vortexes to go to, I'm like, I might as well go to the one that stands out and has some synchronicity behind it. And boy, did I choose correctly, because I went out in this canyon and I started hearing a Native American flute echoing through the canyon walls. And I thought, my goodness, this is something that's just like I'm getting a Sedona moment my first day and having this magic. And then I just couldn't trust my eyes because I couldn't see where it was. So I had to trust my ears. And that was kind of a fun experience in itself.
Did you track it down?
Well, I did. I had to go off the trail, and I realized, boy, this isn't like hiking in New England. This is like cat's claw and
Yeah, there's some
cactus and
dangerous and
agave.
spiky things.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, manzanita. Everything was so crispy and crunchy and sharp. And, I'm getting all scratched up. I find my way climbing up this wash. And then all of a sudden, as I end this wash and I peek my head over, there is this giant Anasazi ruin. Like I've never seen in my life. Stacked stones, ancient cliff dwelling, like this big concave area, like 5 stories high and maybe 10 stories wide. It was just incredible. And so there was the flute player playing away, echoing, and he saw me, so he waved me over, and I went right up to him and just was thanking him for this beautiful sound and how magical this experience was. And so that was the beginning of a relationship that I had with Jesse Kalu, and that's the man.
Jesse,
so this is like way back, OG Sedona style.
Sedona.
So he had arrived in Sedona a few years before me and was also drawn to the sound of the native flute, started making flutes, and he wanted to pay that forward to me. And so later on, when I actually did, I knew I was home. When you come to Sedona and you could smell the land. It has a fragrance to it, especially after the rains.
For sure.
There's something here that, even though I'm from New England, even though I never smelled this in my lifetime, maybe it was a different lifetime. So this was something that I just knew on a soul level. I was home. And that's what kept calling me here. But Jesse, being a flute player, being a Kokopelli, being a Pied Piper himself, he really had to Pied Pipe me here because after that first initial experience, I went back to South Florida where I had just graduated. Actually ended up going from art school to meeting a Zen master, crazy enough, a week after grad school. And that absolutely shifted and changed my life in a way that it was the crash course of metaphysics and Kundalini meditation and spiritual awakening. It was like, okay, now something very, very different is going on in the world, and having the veils and the blinders removed. And so that's where I first heard of Sedona. So it was a huge download and huge teaching I had studying for 6 months. That changed everything because that brought me into the field of psychology. Because I already thought I wasn't going insane, right? Because from New England, and you meet a Zen master, and you start doing Kundalini meditation and remembering all these past lives, and it's kind of it's not typical. So, it went from my family wanting to deprogram me, quite literally, to getting a master's in psychology, and then being the family psychologist after that. Because, of course, you have the degree. So that's kind of the New England mindset, right? So I had to get my credentials and prove I was sane. So anyhow, the psychology really was a beautiful balance in the East and West. So people like Deepak Chopra at the time were heroes to me because they were blending East and West, mindfulness, mind, body, spirit. So this kind of material, the books, and then, of course, at this time in history, especially in the New Age, that's what we called it back then, right? It was New Age. Right. You had books like The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. You had Dan Millman, The Way of the Peaceful War. These incredible, fun stories that were teaching so much incredible information about mindfulness. And it was life-changing. And all this synchronicity and learning about the Mayan calendar and getting on Mayan time, galactic time, and bringing more and more focus to allowing and inviting synchronicity into my life. Was so huge for me from the New England work ethic mindset of doing to being. And so the time that I was in Florida, after this incredible visit of just being, and it was really an interesting time because I had never done a trip by myself. I was always with my family or a girlfriend or a best friend doing road trips. I never did a road trip by myself, let alone spend 3 weeks by myself on an adventure across the country. Not many people get that experience. I'm glad I did it when I was young. And it was it set a precedent. And I did a lot more, of course, after. But what was really interesting about that experience was taking a car and driving across country, at a very young, I was like 25, and just being in the moment. Like a character in one of those books, just going on the adventure, allowing synchronicity, not planning a thing. I had no idea where I would be night to night. Sometimes I was camping. In fact, that's how I got introduced, and my fascination with the stars and astrology started because I was it was my first night. I was in Texas, and it was late, and I'm getting tired, and I'm ready to, like, pull over on the side of the road and just pitch a tent. And then I see this. I had to pee, so I had to relieve myself. And I got out of the car, and it was like nobody on the highway. And as I'm getting outside the car for the first time, because I'm from the East Coast, and everywhere on the East Coast, you get light pollution
and trees.
And trees and hills. Not in Florida, but in New England's all hills. I never had seen the Milky Way. I didn't even know you could see the Milky Way. And I saw the Milky Way for the first time. I saw stars that were something. It was like a whole other Earth that I never had seen. And so it was amazing. And the next exit that I saw happened to be for an observatory. And I'm like, oh, this is too good. Synchronicity. So I go up the exit, and as I get to the top of this observatory, there's a person with a flashlight teaching all the constellations and stars. And I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. So now I'm like learning about what I've never seen, and it was something in me that just wanted that. You know the Big Dipper, you can see certain stars, but to see so much of that was incredible. And that sparked an interest that later, that's like a footnote to a future story, but it came to be where I met another person back in 2000 that was doing the same thing. And that's Daniel Giamario, and that he became my teacher for shamanic astrology, which, also another way of going into mindfulness is the understanding of the counseling background with psychology, because it's a counseling-based astrology. And it's really an understanding of the as above, so below, and how this all works, and helps us to get a blueprint of what our soul purpose really is. And it's a reminder. And we have free will, of course, but we can choose how deep down that soul purpose we want to go, because the guidance is there. And so anyhow, going back to the story of being back in Florida now, I just experienced Sedona, experienced Jesse Clue playing the flute. At this point, I'm still New England mindset. I get a teaching job, so now I'm teaching psychology 101 at the local college here. It was funny because it was an art school, the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, in fact, which is where I was doing my practicum. And so here I am now on the other side, counseling these crazy art students that I was just one for 4 years, a couple of years before. And so, again, synchronicity. And so then at that point, it was fun. I loved teaching. It was something my uncles did. They were both professors, and I thought, all right, well, this is good. I like this, and I'm helping people. And I even worked at a
solid job.
A job, right? and then Jesse Clue shows up again with a phone call. John, I'm in South Florida. Bring your buddies. I'm doing a concert.
Wow.
I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? I'm like, wow, all right. Okay. So again, pipe me. And that was it. I just knew I had to go back to Sedona. And so I just took one of those risks in life, right? Get out of the comfortable uncomfortableness, and just went, I'm going to go for it. And Sedona, here I come.
You showed up in Sedona as classically as it comes, as an artist, looking for inspiration and mentorship some ways.
I didn't know if that was coming, but in those books like Don Juan and the Castaneda series and all this shamanic stuff that I was reading, and Socrates, Socrates, right? Little Bill and Ted, and then these characters in these books that I was reading, they always had a mentor, right? And so it was that kind of dream that maybe I'll meet a mentor. Yeah. So it's funny you say that, and then that's what happened. Jesse showed up. And we kept running into each other synchronistically over and over and over and over. Post office, bookstores, wherever it was, grocery store, gas station. And then he calls me and he says, John, I understand what's going on finally. He's like, I've really got this strong vision of you making and playing flutes, and I'm here to help support you.
Wow.
And so I was like, he didn't know I was going to go buy one of his flutes that morning. I had already made my mind.
Planned.
I was going to buy a flute from him, and he's like, "Nope, you're going to make your own." And I'm like, "What?" So that was the beginning of going to a bamboo patch.
And the student is ready, the master appears.
Exactly.
You know,
and so that was history. And so started making a lot of kindling from the fireplace.
At first.
The first flutes weren't working out so well. And then he would show me and adjust this and do this and do this. And then I had another friend that was also helping me at the time. And, it became such a fun passion to make these flutes. And it was a hobby because I did end up getting a teaching job, teaching psychology also at Yavapai College. So I was still kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to go work and do my thing.
Doesn't hurt to have some money.
And no, it was perfect. And I loved it. But after a year of it and a year of making and now starting to play flutes as well as didgeridoo, another instrument that's not from this land but made from agaves, from the century plants. And so all these indigenous, ancient, shamanic type sounds were now this other hat, this other side of me. So I was this teacher, right? Psychology teacher, and I was also, I'm this kind of hippie musician playing these instruments. Right. But the cool thing was these guys were making a living. And that was something like, wow, maybe could I actually make a living doing this? And I can make a living being a teacher, but can I do this? And so it was that decision of, again, getting out of the uncomfortableness and doing something that was even more the dream and passion.
Right.
Because I was exposed to music in college. I used to dream about playing electric guitar, actually, these giant audiences. And I'd wake up, these were such lucid dreams. I'd go to grab my guitar that was by my bed, like it was in my dream.
But it wasn't there yet.
Wait a minute, I don't even know how to play guitar. I don't even have one. So it was like those kind of mornings where that kind of recurring dream would happen when I was, in college. And anyway, my friend gives me a guitar and he's like, here you go. And so I started learning how to play and pluck away at my favorite songs. And that was fun. I was in a couple bands. It was, it was very amateur. But here I was with the flute, and something about the flute brought out another level of mindfulness where it wasn't so technical.
Like when you're playing it, it dropped you in.
I didn't have to, because I was making, I knew it was something about the technical side was the making of it and the precision and the detail. Thank God I have a Virgo moon. And so this helped me with that. But the other side was then going totally into that minor pentatonic scale, which I learned from rock and roll, which is, from the electric guitar.
Right.
So all of a sudden, just translating a scale and a sound that I was already familiar with in my heart, but it didn't sound like rock and roll. It sounded peaceful and nature and worldly and nostalgic and haunting sometimes. And so that, being a pentatonic scale, it's user friendly. You can't really hit a wrong note. So it's
most of the time.
I kind of call it like music for dummies, right? So it's when you're working with pentatonic, and it actually has a musicality to it that is so beautiful, and it's innate. Bobby McPherson does these TED Talks. If you ever get to see a Bobby McPherson TED Talk about the pentatonic scale, he gets audiences guessing, knowing where the sound is going to go because it's inherent in the scale. It's very, very interesting.
I've seen those.
Little plug.
That's really cool. Yeah, Bobby McFerrin, right?
Bobby McFerrin.
Bobby McFerrin.
That's right.
Yes.
Sorry, it's been a while.
Totally. Don't worry, be happy. For any of you
Don't
guys.
worry, be happy.
No. He did the Don't Worry, Be Happy, which, if you guys didn't know, was all his voice. That entire song was his voice. All the percussion, all the melodies, all the harmonies, all the bass lines was just his voice. So that's kind of what you were referring to.
And the looping of it, too. And so, that's a whole other kind of part of the story. But when I came back here and then I made that bridge of, all right, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay a teacher, or am I going to maybe do something way outside the box and play these hollow logs for a living? Right? And so can I do that? And then it started happening, and I just surrendered and trusted and followed the guidance. And I said, hey, universe, if you want me to do this, just help me out. Be my big manager in the sky, and source, please. If you feel this is something I'm supposed to do, I'm a full yes.
And it's been working for
28 years.
28 years.
Can you believe
now.
it?
Yeah.
28 years.
Totally.
And at that time, then I started taking it serious. And so I actually went out in a motorhome for 2.5 years with the intention to, and I didn't know it'd be 2.5 years. It turned into 2.5 years because I was living in the moment. Sometimes the crow or the eagle or whatever it would be, the wind would decide where I would go from day to day. And sometimes it was a lead, it was a contact. This is before social media, folks. This is like, I had a pager. That was it. That was,
we had those things.
That was like advanced technology, a pager and a payphone. So that's how I stayed in touch with people. And traveling on the road. And, I had my home, my back. It was a little, you can call it the Turtle. It was a little like Datsun before it was even Nissan, right? It was Datsun. And that was how I got around, and people would find me. And how it worked was I would just go to a place that I was called to go. Sometimes it was Crestone, Colorado, or, places in Florida where there was more metaphysical, kind of people. It was usually centered around a bookstore. And I would just show up and go to these new age bookstores. And Domino's, I'd walk in with my didge, be like, "What's that?" Play it.
Tell us about a didgeridoo, since you're on that topic.
Yeah.
Tell us about the didgeridoo. I know we don't have one to show people here today, but
yeah, the didgeridoo is basically, as I joke, it's a hollow log, but it comes from Australia in different parts, mostly in the Northern Territories, and it's a eucalyptus tree that you have to go out and find, and you locate the ones that are near the white ant. Kind of these giant ant hills. It's like a white ant, kind of like a termite. And what it does is it eats out and hollows out the heartwood of the wood.
The ants themselves do.
Ants do. So you go around with a stick tapping and finding the ones until you hear a hollow sound. That's how it works. That's how you actually go to. Then you have to.
That's the original way.
Cut it down, bring it to the billabong, wash it out, right? Spoke shave all the bark off, get it as resonant, and it's a whole woodworking project, but it's already hollow. So you have to, sometimes get a little bit more out, the dirt and the dust and all that stuff. But then you put some beeswax on the mouth and you're good to go.
So it's a very, we'll call it primitive instrument, right? Ancient in many ways.
The stories that I hear is it's 50,000 years old.
Wow.
Can you imagine a tool that's
Aboriginal
being used?
Australia, 50,000 years old.
Remote from the rest of the world. This is like long after Pangea and everything was broken apart.
Right.
But that's
about as old as we think of.
That's about
human
3 or 4 Atlantises ago. If you want to put it into New Age perspective of time, right?
Right.
That's pretty interesting. And it sounds to me as primordial and as cosmic as and that's interesting because a lot of indigenous cultures that when I speak with these people and the medicine people, we're not from here. It's always a very specific place. They point to the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades.
Yeah,
that's where most of the people that I speak with that are in living close to the earth and have their sense of culture from the ancient past, whether it's when I would talk to the Dene or called the Navajo, but Dene is more appropriate. The Hopi, the Polynesians, when I was living in Hawaii, which we're going to get to, and especially in Australia, this is their home. And so this is incorporated into their life. And it is cosmic. It is connecting us to the dream time. Again, this is mindfulness. This isn't like analytical thinking. When you first start to learn didgeridoo, because you have to learn this whole circular breathing thing.
So like any instrument,
it's like
practice.
There's definitely a learning curve in your head, but once you get out of it, it's like surfing an infinity wave, and that's cool. Because you get to go because once you get it, and you can go as long as you want on that ride.
Right, because there's a circular breathing technique that goes along with
That's
it, so that the sound of a didgeridoo is constant.
It's a drone.
Yeah. It's the original drone, one might say.
You could definitely say that. And even in a drum, which is probably, older in some ways, because it's or a clap
Yeah, we've been
stick.
banging on things for a long time.
It's the idiophone, right? It's like so easy an idiot can play, right? So idiophone, and it's it's basically just 2 hands clapping or 2 rocks or 2 sticks,
right?
And that's actually the only other instrument that's traditionally played with didgeridoo is clapsticks, and it creates rhythm, and it's very sacred, very ceremonial. It's not an instrument like we think of in the West. It's a ceremonial tool, and it's a rite of passage, traditionally played by the males because it
a trance generating tool.
It is
a way to go inside,
to connect with the animal world spirit, to the dream time, the song lines. It's such a deep thing. But when I learned to play, there was that teacher inside the instrument. Same thing with the native flute, just very different. One is very heart based, and one is, up. It's the heart chakra. It's something that's more beautiful, whereas didgeridoo is so guttural and deep. It's lower chakra, and so it connects you on another very grounded level, and it's very activating. So Mary was saying earlier how when you shake your body, the lymph.
Yeah.
Well, when you play didgeridoo, every cell in your body starts to vibrate. So it's
right.
And it was kind of this running joke that you start seeing amongst other at this time, this is like back in the mid 90s, right? So it wasn't that popular then. And what happened was you'd meet other didge players, and we'd always we would notice, isn't it kind of cool how it helped change your physiology and your breathing and your strength? And it was such a healthy thing to do for the body because you're oxygenating yourself, you're getting all that lymph, you're getting all the toxins, all these kind of things are part of it. So it was really a healing tool. But what turned me on to it was here in Sedona, about 2 months after moving here and started making flutes. I see this flyer for Dreamtime Frequencies at the Dome in Sedona. Remember the Dome place, John Paul's place?
Yeah, out in VOC.
Doesn't exist anymore, right?
I think the building's still there.
Does
but somebody probably just
I haven't seen it.
has it as their own residence.
But anyway, there was this incredible dome place that we used to do these community gatherings, and hearing a didge in a dome, I thought, this is going to be kind of cool. But what I wasn't prepared for was this man named Taka at the time, and he came around to each of us and played the didgeridoo over our bodies, especially focusing in on the chakras, every chakra. And it was like, okay, here I am. I already been doing Kundalini meditation, meditating on chakras, but this time, for the first time in my life, I actually could feel it because it's like a laser, and it would go into every chakra and start vibrating and moving. And I'm like, this is the cool. And I was blissing out.
Yeah.
I'm like, the world needs more of this. And so
I've definitely experienced you doing that for me, and that feeling of receiving a didgeridoo pointed straight at you it's powerful. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Yeah.
And it was that
played by someone who actually knows how to play it, being the key. Okay.
It's a, this gets into mindfulness again. We'll just keep bringing it back home. When you're playing an instrument, you can play it sometimes too in the mind, right? Especially classically trained musicians, right? It's such a mind game.
It is. I've met so many, as since I'm a musician as well, I've met so many that are classically trained that, they are amazing players, but sometimes they have trouble even kind of not using the written page as their way to play.
They can't improvise. They can't feel it. It's just sight reading, and it's very technical.
It's very technical.
And it's beautiful. I mean, the orchestration, you can't, you can't be so loose, right?
Right.
But I didn't learn music that way. Remember, I learned music in the dream time, playing guitar, rock and roll. And then, I had to learn a few songs because, I was a Pink Floyd, still am, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin songs. Yep. Those were like my go-to. Pearl Jam, this is the time I was around. I was my friend actually from grad school, we all just had a reunion, and we're playing some Pearl Jam and Pink Floyd songs in our living room the other day. And my girlfriend's daughter's 7 years old, and she's asking, "What's this music?" And then one of the girls is like, "Oh, that's old people music."
That's old people music. It's like, wait, what?
I'm like, "Dang, this is
that
old
was Frank
people
Sinatra." Yeah.
But I remember thinking the old music when I was young. That's old people music. So anyway, now I'm an old people. So here we are. And going back to the story though, the music, when it's played, not from being in the mind,
right,
but from a mindful surrender, letting go, and then tuning into the hidden chords, frequencies,
right.
And that was something I noticed when these instruments like the flute and the didgeridoo, which there isn't really sheet music anyway. I mean, how are you going to put sheet music for a didgeridoo? It doesn't.
Yeah.
So, and rhythms, and there's so many rich overtones and fractals of sound, which is what I found years later. That's where a lot of the healing comes from, is when it fractals out in these overtone harmonics. And so when I first started, there was no, it was something that I played by feel, and I loved doing it. So there was an authentic frequency of love that I felt in doing it. And then from psychology and being of service and knowing that was my life path, was to be of service, because it just felt
very
good.
authentic.
It feels good to be of service, right?
Yeah.
And that coming through the music is the hidden chord. So when you tune to the frequency of love, joy, bliss, compassion, right? And you put that through as you're working with people doing any type of sound healing or activation, that's what's being felt. It's a tangible, palpable, you feel what the musician is. It's like a blues player bending notes and, you know, sweating, and these facial expressions. They're feeling their way through the sound.
Yeah.
It's not sheet music.
Yeah.
You can't it would never work because it's a feeling. There's no feeling in the sheet music.
Yeah.
You have to be present with the space between every note. And so that was kind of what then propelled me into pioneering shamanic journey into Dreamtime, this experiential sound healing therapy that I would start traveling in the motorhome and getting invited to different places. And that's what really launched my career. It was back in those days when I just said, well, you know, anybody can do this maybe in Sedona, because Sedona is so, you know, alternative.
Right.
But can I do this in New England? Right? Can I go do this like anywhere else?
Gonna take it on the road.
Take it on the road.
Yeah.
And that was then what gave me the confidence to really see that there's something to this, and explored this. And again, I was pioneering. There was nobody that I met that was actually doing that. It was just somebody, a couple of people in Sedona. But that's what started that, and then getting all these invitations, and then taking it around the world.
Yes.
That's when it got really interesting.
Yeah. And so this sound healing is more than just playing music. It's become an extension of your gift of service, and this idea that music is a healing art form, that music has its healing frequencies built into them.
Absolutely.
When they're played with that and from that heart center of the musician, you know. And would it be safe to say that you almost need to be in a empty mindfulness state?
Isn't that great?
Right? As the musician,
Yeah.
That when you're doing these sound healings for people, it's a lot less about whether you're playing something technically perfect, and more about just tuning in to whatever their frequency is really asking for to receive.
For sure. And, you know, for example, sometimes it feels like I'm dousing for water when I'm playing the didgeridoo, and I'm working with somebody intimately, where I'm, you know, it's usually only about an inch above the body, but it's physical. You feel the warmth, you feel the vibration, you feel it into your bones, to every cell. And I sometimes get feedback from, like, it's dull sounding, or it's like, okay, we got to work like that spot. Let's get that stuck energy. Yeah. It's so intuitive, but it's also sometimes there are these little cues that I get, and then spend time break it up. Right? Yeah. It's kind of like, I call them e-stuctions.
E-stuctions.
Because it's energy.
Like that. Yeah.
That's stuck, versus emotion, which is what? Moving. Our energy. Yeah. And that's what it does. It helps bring it up. It breaks it up and then gets it moving. Yeah. And that's why people sometimes will cry and release and even have catharsis during these sessions, which was something that I was prepared for from my counseling. And then I could help them, whether it was an individual journey, could really help cut to the chase and get people right to a place where they can move the energy, and then help process at the end, and share what came up, and, words weren't necessary.
Right.
It was universal language.
Right.
And that's what brought me into international travel, was not being able to speak language, but being able to speak a universal language with music.
Right.
And touch souls. And then taking the personalized sound journey to thousands of people at once, and incorporating in my concerts the same mindlessness and being present in moment and surrender, and being let kind of like the Grateful Dead would say, let the music play the band, right? When that moment happens,
right,
there's something beyond it, but then also feeling it, pushing that, using the instruments as a carrier wave, right? And so that's how the impact is then felt. And this type of, this isn't like playing at bars. This is playing in theaters or temples or places where you can hear a pin drop, and people are so present. And that's what if I want to do that kind of thing, I really love that experience.
I love that too.
Because we're become a coherent field in that love frequency.
Tell me about how does these types of experiences of a sound healing, what does it look like for somebody to receive a sound journey, a sound healing, right?
Right.
And, you've already spoken quite a bit about kind of what they might expect to feel, unstuckness and things like that. But could you maybe expand on that and then tie in, how does that create a sense of present moment awareness, mindfulness, meditation? How do these journeys create that for that person? And where do they receive that present momentness?
Yeah. Well, in Sedona, it's great because people are coming here for this. They're seeking, right? They're seeking something spiritual. So often I'll do groups. Last night I did the Frequency Friday at the ULM, where Mark has the biocharger, and we combine the session. And, you get, 30, 40 people laying down all together in that coherent field. And there's something that just happens with that, and everyone's ready for it. It's not like there's resistance. People are like sponges, and they're gonna absorb. And what people do typically is they're laying down on yoga mat.
Okay.
And
so this is what they might experience in a sound
exactly
journey.
what they might experience. So if you were to come to Sedona and do this with us,
right?
And or if this is an individual, same thing. If an individual, be it most likely at my home, where I have it all the bells and whistles set up, and cushiness, and everything's ready to go. And this is a laying down typically experience. You don't have to, but most 99% people lay down.
Because the idea is to relax.
It's to let go and surrender.
Yeah.
It's a non-doing. You can't try to relax.
Right. Yeah.
You have to melt. You have to just surrender. And then it's also really good to have an intention set for what because that's why it's a sound healing / shamanic journey.
Right.
Because of the way I bring in different instruments to help create that essence. And then I use a lot of live looping and different aspects of sound, and sometimes a little bit of electronica too. It depends, but delays and reverbs, and that opens up to more things I can do with my voice and vocals and chants, just to give it more ambience, right? And drone-like and kind of trippy psychedelic experiences. And so for some people, it is a psychedelic trippy experience. Like they've done something like that with ayahuasca or something. They're like, this feels, you brought me right back to that
Brings
moment.
you back, yeah.
And it's like it activates that dream time. So it's an awakened dreaming. It's a hypnagogic state where we're between the worlds. It's the veils are thin, and people start to have imagery. They start seeing visions, and because the music is morphing and changing from mountains and canyons in Sedona to swimming with the whales, and being underwater and ocean sounds, and it has all this cosmic energy. So there's this shamangelic aspect to it, and it has an array of different chakra frequencies.
Stacking.
So I start as low to high, from the lightest of bells to the deepest of the didgeridoo and drum and things like that. So what people experience often is sometimes people feel like stone. They can't move. It's so like, oh my God, I couldn't feel my body. Like a really deep relaxed state.
Deep.
Some people feel the opposite. They get activated and they feel light and their hands float up and they start doing mantras. And some people are having tears of release, of joy, even giggles. Right? And then some people, it's like, oh, the vibration.
There's tickles or something.
It might be unusual to have a chakra activated that they've never felt that way. And so then it's also the tears of release and deep sadness that sometimes comes through. And so it's kind of like, in a way, it's like breath work, right? So breath work has that aspect to it where people have this release. So it's it can be wild and shamanic and it can be very peaceful and deep. Some people fall asleep, but they're still
receiving.
They're going so deep that they actually shift into deep, real theta waves and check out on that level. But most of the time, it's between the worlds. Yeah.
That veil being thin, like you said, you have access to other realms, one might say, or dimensionalities, or as they say, like 3D, 4D, 5D kind of stuff. You can kind of like transcend through these states, through the frequencies of the music.
That's right.
And the music itself is the carrier wave, takes you down the road.
You got it.
Yeah.
you know
Awesome.
the drill.
You mentioned something in your description about I heard you say the word whales, and I feel like that's a great
we're shifting
segue.
to the oceans.
Yes, it's a great segue.
See the screen.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, John. Cue the whales.
Cue the whales, John. So tell us a little bit about your time, because you've world traveled. You've like we said at the beginning, you've been to all these different places, but you ended up settling for a good little while in the Hawaiian Islands.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, and in particular, get right to the whales.
Sure.
Tell us about the whales.
I was here for about 14 years as my base and the desert. And I was drying up. And I'm like,
right?
And I was spending my winters in Hawaii for the last couple years, like 2008, 2009. And I would go to Kauai and Maui. And every winter, the whales come home.
The humpback whales.
Humpback whales, like we see right here. Well, that's actually not a humpback.
It is.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. There it is. Okay. It almost looked like the New Zealand whale. I can't think of like that movie Whale Dreamer or Whale Rider.
Whale Rider. That's
I
a great
love that
one.
movie.
Yeah.
And so the we're just plugging everybody today. So
I know, right?
we don't get paid for this. This is just like from the heart, paid forward, surrender.
That's right.
Okay. So the whales, I would go and I just had this connection with the whales from the moment I got to Hawaii. I would just be.
How did you know? What do you mean
I would just like look this way, and I would look into the ocean, and I'd see a whale jumping out of the water.
Oh, wow.
And when you see that, something that magnificent and giant and like getting your attention, because people live in Hawaii, they don't see, like, I'm like, you don't see the whales every day? Like I'm like, I see them every day.
Wow.
And they connect, and there was this contact. And then I was invited out on a whale boat in Maui, where they came really close to the boat. And it was just like, it was, everybody's just in bliss. Didn't matter how old the person was.
Totally.
So there was something about the whales. And then I came back to Sedona, for the next, back to the desert. And I would have this recurring dream of this whale that would come out of the water and start staring at me. Because that's kind of that
big eye.
Giant eye of the universe. But as it stared at me, it was like downloading unconditional love. Like,
and you've had a recurring dream about
and
this.
It was recurring to the point where I was truly going into ecstasy in my dreams because of the feeling of what unconditional love from a whale and the source going through that whale, the eyes of the soul, right? Eye to eye, something that big.
Wow.
And it was incredibly visceral to the point where I would just be in total tears, and it was lucid. And it would always kind of continue from night to night to another deeper layer of it. And I'd be waking up in this reality in the same tears, just soaked. And it would last for hours, this feeling.
Wow.
And finally it was, all right, I gotta go to Hawaii and have more of this.
So are you saying that you were having those dreams before you even went to Hawaii?
2009, yes. No, it happened when I went there in the winter. And then I'd come back to Sedona for a couple of years. It took me a couple of years.
Gotcha.
My whole life.
Yeah.
And like, that one of those risks.
And then you made the decision to move there full time at some point.
Took the risk.
Yeah.
And at the time I was working in Japan, I started making a lot of connections there, and ended up figuring also that, okay, it's the right time. Now I can be in Hawaii, which is right center, smack between Japan and Arizona.
Right.
So I thought, okay, well, this will work. And then that was my goal, was to go back and forth to these places, and that's where my work was. And so that's what happened. And going to Kauai, and then shortly after being there and getting comfortable with because I was really afraid it's not like Newport, where I grew up in Rhode Island. The beaches there are very shallow, and they don't get deep. It's not deep blue ocean. It's not whale. It's not it's very different than Hawaiian beaches.
Hawaiian
and
oceans
ocean
are big.
It took me a while just to get comfortable in snorkeling and surfing, and then really getting connected with being comfortable in the water. I first would go to Kealakekua Bay, kind of secret place, but it's where the wild dolphins would come in and interact, and you could comfortably swim with them.
Such an amazing thing.
And they would and the joy, it wasn't fearful. It was just instant joy and bliss. And then they would communicate with their sonar. And anyway, that was my kind of gateway to swimming with whales. And so ended up getting invited to a friend's catamaran off of Lahaina. And you're not supposed to swim and be close to whales. It's actually illegal. But actually, there's no way you can chase a whale and swim after it anyway. So it's kind of funny.
They're so fast.
If whales want to come to you,
they'll find you.
They'll find you. And they come to you. So I was just eating my sandwich on the boat. It was lunchtime, and I'm like, okay, now I'm hot. I'm done. I'm just going to get in the water. I brought my snorkel just in case. Went off the side of the boat, and below the boat was this incredible giant humpback whale, like maybe 20, 30 feet down, like very close.
Very close.
No idea it was even down there.
Yeah.
And I just started to connect with it, starting to feel that bliss, starting to feel that joy, the excitement. And then out of nowhere, baby whale comes out from under her. So I'm like looking down, and all of a sudden I see this mouth coming at me, rushing, like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to get breached on. This was the destiny. I'm going to get, I'm going to go out being breached on by a whale. What karma, right? So I went from, bliss and tears to like
a little bit of fear.
Checking my pants there. Yep. And I'm like, oh my God. So then at the last second, it just slowed down. Just one movement of its tail and the speed of it coming at me, right at me, to just instantly stopping and slowly coming up. Boom, stared at me with its
There's that eye.
Like, there's my dream. Like having this cognizant knowing that this was not just a dream. This was a future pacing,
premonition of some kind.
Premonition. Yeah. And the same feeling started happening like in the dream, and my goggles are filling with, saltiness of water, liquid, but it wasn't my loose goggle. It was my tears getting. And then it gave me this incredible download. Swam off, and I'm watching it, and in my periphery, all of a sudden, mama whale moves for the first time in 10 minutes, comes around, and does the same thing.
With the eye, the same thing? Oh my gosh, wow.
And this is, 4 times the size of baby whale.
At least.
I'm absolutely now, like, in complete ecstatic bliss. And then as she decides to then, after her moment with me, escort Papa comes and does the same thing. I got the Holy Trinity.
Wow.
Absolute. It's a story that sounds almost
too good
like,
to be true.
Like, is this?
By many
come on, John.
standards.
It's quite a whale fish story. That
it's
you're
quite a whale
about.
story. Yeah,
but it's like,
hey,
I've had weirder mystical experiences than that. But that was something that I couldn't even. When I got back to the boat, I couldn't speak for hours. Like everyone wanted to know because they saw it, but I couldn't. It was just I was in another consciousness with unconditional love, knowing. And so I realized this is what I'm doing in Hawaii. This has got to be, and so learning the way of the ocean. It's kind of like, the Avatar movie, the last one where, the way of the ocean, right? So, and having that connection and the Polynesian connection and learning, because I love sacred sites and I love emerging into a culture. And so it's what I just shapeshift. It's like these past lives. So going to the sacred sites, I worked in a Hawaiian immersion school, learning all about the ancient Hawaiian Polynesian ways, and going it's just how they lived in the language and the shifting in the prayers and the heiaus and all these sacred sites, and it was all part of the magic of spending time. And then that led me to Asia, which then ultimately, of course, the last 3 years of craziness ended up
COVID craziness
back,
yeah,
leaving Asia and coming back to Kauai and going through it there, and then feeling and hearing that Sedona was wide open and ready, and I could perform again and be in front of an audience, and because I was doing the Zoom and doing this kind of thing, and it was good for the time and helping people and learning how to do all that, but being with real people, even though this is what we're doing right now, guys, not to poo-poo this, but it's like, it's definitely something that it's to feel and be in a live interaction with human, like Mary was saying, it's like, I'm an extrovert. Right. I'm a what do you call it? The mover. I'm a mover. I'm a mover, baby.
You're a mover.
And so that's what I do, and now here I am, and it's been an absolute next incredible chapter being back here in Sedona, because now things are culminating in a whole other level for me from when I left for Hawaii and what happened from the inner realms of COVID, and then emerging back to what's happening here with all the ecstatic dance. Because when I was in Kauai, before I even went to Asia, I started doing live ecstatic dances because I was looping, and I had all these African drums. You know, I used to work with Three Trees as my music partner here, and he was a Sedona icon for such a long time, and then so really, you know, he was my percussionist. I never really had to play because I did all the other things, and he was the percussionist. But then in Hawaii, you know, it wasn't like I was doing that much work with shamanic sound healing and native flute. It wasn't so what Hawaii's known for, right? So, you know, I did learn the Polynesian nose flute and all that kind of stuff, but I started playing Tahitian drums. And that started my skill set in getting even more connected in rhythm and building my musicianship. And then I also started playing taiko drums and being in a group with that. So there was like, you know, what was happening in the islands. And so this other music, and then my girlfriend at the time was a music teacher. So I was like, I could pick her brain. So I didn't have any formal training in music. Right. And I still don't know how to read or write music, but the rhythms and the level of what percussion can add does so much, right? So you know as a musician yourself. So then during COVID, you know, as Mary was saying, how dance saved her soul and saved her from going crazy during that time. My neighbor, I could hear one day, sounded like he was playing live guitar, and I went over, and he had an extra electric guitar, and he's like, "Yeah, you do play?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I haven't played electric guitar in so long." Like, we started jamming out to all the, you know, favorite songs, and then he's like, "Here, why don't you borrow it?" So I'm like, okay. And then I went on YouTube University back to like what I initially started playing guitar for was to play Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and all these favorite songs that I had, and started incorporating it into my sound journeys because I was doing quite a prolific. Every week, my give back and sanity was to take. I had a group on Facebook where I was playing an hour and a half concert every week. A sound journey for people all globally around the world, and it was incredible. So I started to really incorporate for the first time electric guitar into this indigenous world music vibe, and you know, from the background,
adding one more layer.
Exactly. So from the ecstatic dance that I was doing on Kauai, and then having that skill set, and then coming here and meeting Jade Lyons the first week, we got paired up, and he was putting together this live ecstatic dance.
I remember I brought him to that.
Right.
So, you were doing a sound journey, and I was like, Jade, you got to come meet John.
So because he's an amazing gong player too. So we ended up meeting over sound healing and gongs, and which is just a perfect match. But then he's like, let's do this. He described his whole vision of his live ecstatic dance band called Ishiru, and lots of synchronicities there. But long story short, here I am now playing electric guitar for the first time on stage in front of people at these, you know, thousands of people at these festivals, going, oh my God, another dream from my childhood coming true. And whoever would have thought? So that's that's kind of the catching us up now to the modern reality
Yeah.
of all this and how my life journey has evolved, but still all these different hats are what I can still do here in Sedona, and it keeps me quite busy. It's like this.
It does.
It's not just like I just do that. There's enough diversity that really keeps an Aquarian like myself
Occupied.
I don't get bored. I don't have time
bored.
to get bored because there's just too many hats to wear and too many fun things to do.
And it's a great time to be in Sedona. I mean, I've been in Sedona most of my life at this point, and I've never seen Sedona so lively and so exciting and so fun and so many.
Oh, it's so different.
It used to be when I was a kid growing up here, we would basically show up at the Circle K at 8 p.m., which was the one and only place to go, and we would all just basically decide where's the bonfire going to be tonight. Okay, well that's where we're going. And for years and years and years, you know, on any given Friday or Saturday night, it was like, okay, is there anything to do tonight? Like, are we doing anything? And now it's like, okay, which of my best friends am I going to have to disappoint because I can't go to everybody's event all at the same time? So
Sedona's definitely changed.
It's an exciting thing. And, you know, I think we're getting close to our end,
Yeah.
and I really want to thank you for everything that you shared. I want to thank you for your friendship over the years, all the music that we've shared. You know, we've done some really fun stuff together for sure. And I really want people to experience you. And you were kind enough to bring your flute with you today. So maybe you could grace us with a beautiful song to send us out. And tell us anything you want to tell us about this special, very interesting looking flute that we're about to hear.
This is a very special flute because it came in a dream.
You made this.
I made this.
You made this.
This was originally made in 2000. So after, you know, I started making flutes in 95, so about 5 years of flute making before I would even attempt anything like this. And so it's really, as you can see, it's 4 chambers, it's 4 flutes in one. And that was the dream, to take the native flute pentatonic scale, but then add drones to it. I had seen a drone flute, which is just the low root note.
Yes.
So it showed up 3 times within 6 months. And I was like, okay, that sounds amazing. And at first, it was actually at a rainbow gathering in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. And I'm like, wow, someone carried in a speaker? Because I thought
because it has that resonant frequency.
Through like reverb or speaker, but it was actually just, I'd never heard a drone flute before.
Right.
So my ears were like, okay. And then this dream came in, well, why stop at 2 chambers? Why not add the octave? And then, okay, why not add the 5th? But when I did it in a way where I could also make chords. So there's lots of different ways that you can play this flute modally, and of course, it started to grow, but the dream didn't come with instructions. It just came with a vision of what it would look like and what the notes would be, but not how to play it. So there was years, like I think it was like 7 years went by, and then all of a sudden I'm in a journey one day, and Spirit's like, turn it this way. So I started playing it this way, and all of a sudden it started making all these like Inca Mayan type of like thirds and fourths and chord shifts, and I'm like, oh my, I didn't even know it could do that. So it was really kind of a fun thing. So I'm still learning from a vision and a dream that happened back in 23 years ago.
Okay.
Wow, okay.
This is John Dumas on his 4-chamber flute.
Reverb, please.
I was just going to say, John Strayer, reverb, please. And I'd like to invite everyone to close your eyes and just relax and just really receive this beautiful frequency that you're about to hear. Wow. Thank you, brother. That was amazing. Your mastery is so very apparent for all to hear. The circular breathing in particular is just, it's next level. It's next level, brother. So thank you.
The trick of playing the fourth chamber is definitely being able. You kind of have to be a didgeridoo player to play this. But luckily I was. So.
And luckily you are. Amazing. Tell us how, or tell our friends out here, how can they find you? And you know, where are you these days?
Easy, just my name.
JohnDumas.com.
Right?
Are you on socials and all that kind of stuff?
The contact page links you to my phone.
Okay, you're more of a phone. Just give me a call. OG.
Call me,
yeah.
Text me.
Call me, text me. Yeah.
And then emails.
Okay.
And of course, my Facebook and Instagram. But
great.
Please, my Instagram is still.
I can relate. Yeah.
I'm still learning that.
Still
kind
working
of
it
new
out.
School stuff.
Yep.
And
so JohnDumas.com. Yep.
Fantastic. And I have CDs available on my Shopify store. It's all linked through my website, and all kinds of YouTube videos that are just available, linked to my website as well.
Beautiful.
And or just catch me live. Catch me come to Sedona.
Right.
Come
You're all over the place.
Get the kahea, get the calling, and if you feel it, come and join us. Maybe we'll all be playing together and jamming soon. So we're
That's
gonna
right.
be trying to get him into a project. So I'm like, come on, Gabriel, you can do it.
I'll have to say, any project that John invites me to, I would have a hard time turning down. I'll tell you. Thank you so much for being here today, brother.
Thanks for hosting this, and thank you, John Strayer.
Thank you, John Strayer, and Humankind.
Platform for us here. In this way, and it's been a wonderful way to spend the mornings.
Absolutely.
Gabriel, just like.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Definitely. We'll give you another taste of that awesome little sponsorship commercial, and we'll be right back for our final guest in just a minute. Thank you.
And that's something that I'm part of in September, right? So
yes, in fact, the Daughters of Heaven. I made a critical error and said that it was in July. It's actually in September, 29th and 30th, right? And you're the musical director for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's amazing other gifted musicians.
Tell us. Yeah, take a minute. Tell us a little bit about that.
And I did we actually did a whole event there, because it's the Global Center for Christ Consciousness. We had an intention to do something to really connect people to the Christ consciousness, and I've also worked with a woman named Gabriella, which I almost kind of goofed up here.
It's okay.
It's okay. I'm trying to call him by the name he wants me to.
We had a conversation this morning about how I'm Gabriel now. I'm not Gabe anymore.
Anyway, Rumi, Hafiz, poetry, live music. I had to learn these Persian kind of Middle Eastern scales, which is great for going into the Christ consciousness and bringing in that theme and that place of music. And so we have Nina already have prepared, but we also have this another couple, beautiful, Ted and Magella, and they're coming here, and they're going to be part of that with their musical. Ted's a true rock and roller from way back in the day, Wishbone Ash. If you ever heard of those guys. And Magella just really carries that Daughters of Heaven frequency, as well as Jaya Lakshmi. And so it's Nina, Jaya, and Magella holding the real container for this with their incredible, beautiful voices. And these aren't songs. This is like a conference that's immersed with music. It's not just, okay, here's a song at the end or in the beginning. We are going to be playing it's almost like more like the Tonight Show, where instead it's a galactic, cosmic, beautiful Christ consciousness Tonight Show, where the music is coming in. And we're there to flow.
So it's hosted, and there's presentations, but there's music that goes along with all of that as well.
Yes, absolutely, and of course featuring Michael Murdad, who I perform there, or prayer form, I should say, with him, usually every few weeks at that center. So what a joy that is.
Beautiful place.
And this is all
Global Center for Christ Consciousness, right?
This is his book. He just wrote this called The Daughters of Heaven, which is incredible, because there is a shifting of consciousness on the planet, and you don't have to be a female to be a daughter of heaven. It's kind of just it came through this way, but it's really the devotion of a human being that is very much dedicated to God and to that loving, sweet, and kind of more the feminine characteristics of that. So it's why it's why he called it the daughters of heaven. But it's that Christ consciousness that we all carry inside, and that devotion. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And you're beautiful. Oh. Thank you, brother. We'll be right back. Taking 5. See you guys in a minute. Ciao.
In the spring of 2023, during a sacred Sunday service, when Michael Murdad spontaneously spoke or channeled the words, "The Daughters of Heaven," there was a palpable wave of silence and awe that moved through everyone in the room and in the viewers around the world.
It was the pause that was heard around the world. It was the pause that was heard around the world.
Lightworkers are here to serve mankind. The daughters of heaven are here to serve God.
An unprecedented spiritual activation and integration.
I saw a bright white light and a strong vibration, yet so loving and gentle. It's like an activation started, and it's not going away.
The daughters of heaven are the final wave of lightworkers that have come to complete God's divine plan of awakening.
The daughters of heaven are here, now, holding space, bringing God's light back to our hearts, back to Eden, heaven on earth.
I began to feel an amazing radiating resonance in my body, mind, and soul, like an angelic waterfall of love from my head down my back into my heels and grounding me.
I felt a rush of warm energy flow through my body. It feels like Daughters of Heaven is a name for something I've always felt since childhood.
Moved in slow motion. We could feel something big, something special, something new was coming.
A blanket of peace and love enveloped me, and extraordinary feelings in my solar plexus and heart chakra. I feel like I'm shining like a Christmas tree.
To the daughters of heaven reconnected me on the deepest level with my heart and soul.
I always felt drawn to the Divine Mother, but now a veil was lifted, and I feel her speaking to me and guiding
My
me.
heart chakra blossomed, and I felt at last that I found what my soul's been searching a lifetime for.
The very words, Daughters of Heaven, seem to carry light codes and information beyond just the meaning of the words.
This is a beautiful call to all lightworkers to take their work to the next level.
The daughters of heaven are embodiments of the Divine Mother, and they serve the Divine Mother as midwives to help birth the Christ in everyone they meet.